right, so we have Lauren Bentley, did I say that correctly, on the podcast. And I love Lauren and what she does. She's very passionate about embodiment and bridging that with yoga. And I would love to hear, Lauren, your experience and how you got to where you're at now and the work that you do.
Wow, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here. It's been a journey, like quite the journey. I started off my career 9 years ago as a personal trainer. And so that was just the very first thing that I stepped into. And I had this whole idea that I wanted to just help women feel good in their body now. I just am really over this idea of I will feel good in my body when I experience this, or I'll take myself on vacation, or I'll do something nice for myself when. And we're never going to get there if it's always the when, because
Mm.
even if we were to get there, it's not going to be what we think it's going to be, so we're still going to feel like we're failing at that. So my whole mission was to help women feel good in their body right now by creating sustainable movement, helping them feel good in their body, learning how to eat foods that fuel their body and that taste good, not that will help them lose weight, just focusing on just bridging together the whole body, mind, spirit. And that didn't work out in the corporate setting. They want your clients in and out and just helping them to get the results as quickly as possible on to the next, right? They're all very money motivated. So I then left personal training. I went back to bartending. I was a bartender at a strip club for many years. That was probably one of my most favorite jobs ever.
Wow.
And yeah, but I knew, right, that I still couldn't be there forever, right? Like, um, in my 20s, being a bartender at a strip club was fantastic. But in my 30s, and my kids are just getting older, like eventually I have to figure something out, right? So I went back to bartending. I'm like, well, now what, right? Like I did the personal training thing. It didn't work out. And this is when I started to get into Reiki, yoga, meditation. And then I just started to get like woken up in the middle of the night, like with these business ideas in my head and different business names and telling me to like bring this all together. And to me, I'm like, how is that even going to happen? Because from what I saw in the corporate setting, you can't bridge together spirituality and personal training. It doesn't mesh. But I kept having this voice in my head of like, do it, make it work, do it yourself, create your own. So that's what I did. So I created like a gym in my basement. I started training out of my home. And then, that kind of started to back me in a corner because I can only train so many people a day. I can only have people in my house so often. So then that's when I started to explore social media and doing things more virtually. And it all just kind of unfolded for me of just helping people feel good in their body. And I had no idea that 9 years ago, I mean, and that was spirituality. I had no idea what I was doing was mindfulness, right? I had no idea what I was doing was like trauma healing, helping people just get the hell out of their way and connect with what's here. But it's amazing to look back and see how it all unfolded so beautifully.
Yeah,
And now, sorry, Samantha, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I got chills when you were saying that voice, late at night was speaking to you, saying like, make it happen. And the I love what you're speaking to because it's the power of now. I can't tell you how many times looking back on my past where I see pictures or photos of myself, or I'm reflecting on different moments in my life where I'm like, wow, that was such a precious time. Like I was such a beautiful human being. And I was like, why didn't I appreciate myself then? It's like, so now I'm like, I'm just going to appreciate myself now as I am. And like, that's how I feel like women, we really steal our joy and our, yeah, but just not appreciating who we are in every single moment and iteration of self. So I love what you just said about that.
Yeah, I feel like I want to share a little bit of something I've experienced that's similar. I used to have really big issues with self-image and always wanting to be like the smallest possible in my body. And looking back on photos when at that time I thought that I needed to like lose weight, I'm just like looking back, I'm like mortified because I'm like, oh my God, I looked amazing and beautiful. I still do now, but just reflecting back to that time and feeling into where I was in my body and the thoughts that were present, I just have so much more compassion for myself and really giving love to that past version of myself that was so hard on themselves and wanting so badly to shift and change. And yeah, thank you, Samantha, for bringing that up.
Yeah. I mean, and we kind of, I don't know how old both of you are, but close enough that I could feel comfortable saying that we grew up in a pretty toxic time. Like our preteen teenager, I recently saw like a reel or a TikTok or something talking about how like the women that we saw like in the spotlight who were deemed overweight when they weren't, like Christina Aguilera at times, or Hilary Duff. I don't know who else, right? Kelly Clarkson, even like Britney Spears would be picked apart at times, you know, and it's like Jessica Simpson, like, and you look at them and you're like, they were completely normal, but we were told that that was overweight.
Right.
So that's been hammered into our minds that to feel like we aren't good enough.
Right. So many unrealistic expectations. From media, from, you know, the pop culture. And I don't know about in Ohio. Did you grow up in Ohio?
Yeah.
I feel like too in California, I'm curious of what it's like in other states, but I feel like California is even like more so. Like, yeah. So yeah, I really feel how that infiltrated my psyche, and it's like I'm constantly purging those thoughts and that conditioning.
Yeah, I remember being a teenager, and Samantha, you probably remember this because we grew up together, but I would have posters of Victoria's Secret models like on in my room. So like seeing that every day and perpetuating that image of perfection or whatever it is, like really did something to my psyche. And yeah, like Samantha said, just it's all about unlearning and deprogramming all of not only the beliefs and thoughts that we have about ourselves, but like the images that we're seeing all the time, and really being mindful of how that's affecting the way that we view our bodies and how we relate to ourselves.
It's so empowering with how things are changing now. Just the ads that we see, it's real bodies.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Real bodies, real women. What a revolutionary thought. And I love what you said too about working with your clients and working with foods that, you know, shifting the focus from how do I look to how do I feel in my body, how do I feel about the foods that I'm eating, you know, the intention behind all of that.
Yeah. I had no idea that what I was doing was like a law of attraction kind of thing. And I really kind of like despise law of attraction, but like, I feel like we miss so much of like the key. But, you know, and I still say this all the time to my clients of, you know, whether they think that they want money or they want to lose weight or just whatever they think that they want, it's never the object that you want or the goal that you have that's the actual thing. It's always like what's underneath that we believe is it's just going to bring us that happiness, that joy.
Right.
So connecting with that feeling. So if you think that, you know, getting a toned body or a strong body is going to bring you happiness, it's not. If that's the only focus. Like, what's the feeling underneath that? How can you begin just to feel that feeling now? What can you do every day that helps you feel sexy or strong or capable or worthy? You know, I mean, I think that's one of our biggest things is worthiness. It always comes down to feeling unworthy, and we want to feel worthy.
Right.
If someone is like really, really struggling with that, say you had a client, what would you like, how would you navigate that if they're so stuck in that?
Gosh, I mean,
I know it's kind of a hard question.
it would depend on the individual, but I mean, we'd have to start it all the way from the beginning. I'm very much a bottom up approach kind of person, meaning that like we really focus on building the foundation first. So before we pressed record on here, I was telling you guys about about the nervous system healing that I focus on first and foremost, because if we're just stuck in that fight or flight, no amount of healing or mindset or breath work or anything is going to really do much, right? We're always going to feel like we are out of our body, not present, just feeling really overwhelmed. So a lot of it, even with that, not feeling comfortable in your body, well, let's look at that nervous system, because there is more than likely something happening there at that ground level, at that most basic level of healing. That even after, say, like after our first, like that's usually always my first session is exploring the nervous system. And then our second session, already I will see that person come back like already so much lighter in their being. And it's amazing. Even sometimes if I've had a lot of people work with therapies after therapists and trying all these different things and not experiencing any sort of relief, they'll come to me for one session. We work on the nervous system, everything clicked, right? Like, and their therapist was on to something, right? They're more than likely doing the absolute best that they possibly could. They're just missing that one key factor. And so that really put it all into place. So nervous system first. And then a lot of times it's trauma healing, it's inner child healing, it's, remothering or, refathering or just reparenting yourself. And then it's, it starts with mirror work and movement and, just it really like depends on each individual person. Cause I have some clients who will like, I'll bring up like ecstatic dance and they're like, no, I will. I'm like, okay. Or breath work. No. Right. So it all depends, but foundation is nervous system. And then, thinking about like, the inner child stuff. And when I say trauma healing too, like I'm not somebody who will guide them back into specific traumas. I firmly believe that once a person knows that they're in a safe space and they're feeling safe in their body, nervous system healing, then any sort of trauma that needs to come up to be healed and released will come up when it's ready, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, it will come up when it's time. And then we work with that when that happens.
Beautiful.
Yes. 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 Yeah, I resonate so much with everything you're saying. It's very similar with the work that I do, and I'm sure Janessa does. And I'm curious, how have you weaved this with yoga? Because your main practice or modality is teaching yoga, correct? You just opened up a studio, is that right?
Nay.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So Half Moon Yoga in Medina, Ohio, if anyone is local, love to have you. Yeah, you want me to tell you more about the studio or about how I weave the
both?
Yeah.
Okay.
And how you came to yoga, how you started to transition.
Yeah. Okay. So how I even came to yoga. So I found yoga through Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. Well, I've tried yoga before her and I honestly hated it. I hated yoga. I was like, it's so slow. It's boring. I just can't. And then after getting into Reiki and meditation, obviously yoga is right there with it all. And so I found Yoga with Adrienne and she had like this 30-day yoga on there. And so I made it a point for 30 days to do yoga every single day. And I was pretty hooked after that. So how I bring together the yoga with this trauma healing work and just healing with the nervous system, it's because yoga has such an energetic component to it, right? Like we can look at the physical aspect of it, of the vinyasa, of the movement with your breath, the moving meditation. And so there's obviously very physical reasons why we feel so great after we leave the mat, right? Like we've learned how to deepen the breath where, that breath is massaging the vagus nerve. We're also relaxing our eyes and our jaw, shoulders back, also stimulating the vagus nerve, which is the key to opening up that parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and relax. And we're also just learning how to be more mindful and more connected to ourselves there on the mat. Okay, so very physical components of it, but then we have the whole energetic piece. And I do like an intro to yoga workshop every few months, and I always focus on the energetics. So we have our hip openers, which if you've ever taken a yoga class of any kind and you are ever asked to be in a hip opener, there's more than likely an emotional release that comes up for you, especially it's when you're first times doing it. My stepsister's dad told me at Thanksgiving that he recently got into yoga. His therapist told him to start going, and he was holding pigeon pose. He said, I was just sobbing and I had no idea. I'm like, that's amazing, because he's like this like muscle-y dude. He's like, harder on the edges. So he needs to feel for sure. So we have the energetic portion of the opening up our hips, which the sacral chakra is right below the belly button. It's very much connected to your hips. It's where the emotion begins. And so we can allow that emotion to be energy in motion. We feel it, we move it, we breathe it, we express it, or we push it down and try to pretend it doesn't exist. But it doesn't go anywhere, right? As many of us know, the body keeps score, the body holds on. So when we find a hip opener, whatever is ready to be released, it's going to come out. And so that's amazing. Like, don't hold back. You're not going to be hit with like everything that's ever happened to you at once, but something will come up more than likely when it's time. And what I think is really important to know is that you won't always have like an image or a flashback of it. Like, thank you, subconscious mind, for still protecting us, right? Like, we don't need to relive the trauma. We don't need to be re-traumatized, right? But you may find that you're just really pissed off and you don't know why, or you're just really sad. Let yourself feel it. It's okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be really sad. And then we have like the component of like, then you move that spine, right? So the spine is the main energy column. So your energy starts to move more freely up and down the length of the spine. And then we get into, the heart openers, which is amazing, but then mostly too the throat opener, because sacral chakra and your throat chakra are very much connected to one another. And so this is your ability then to release, to open, to just be your fullest expression of yourself. And so, like, to be honest, I really don't know the moment that it like clicked for me to like bring the two together. I think I was just always just super aware of the energetic components of yoga that it just naturally kind of came to be. And with the mindfulness and the breath work and everything, it just fits well. And I don't do yoga with all my clients, but I try to do yoga with most of my clients, and it's mostly yin yoga, because yin is so great for your nervous system. You can add in the affirmation component, and you're doing a lot of hip openers, heart openers, and it's a great segue into meditation. So I found that to be really healing for the majority of what I work with.
Yeah, I'm a yin girl. I do boxing and like high intensity workouts, but I'm like, when I come to yoga, I'm like all about that yin restorative.
It's so good.
There's so much.
Oh, what?
There's just so much what you just said. I would love to kind of digest a little bit of it, but what were you going to say, Janessa?
I was going to say that I'm actually more into Pilates right now. I mean, I love yoga. I still practice it a lot. I've been practicing for over 10 years, it seems like now. But yeah, I mean, depending on what you feel that your body needs and honoring that, like there's just so many different modalities we can use and try at different times that best suit where we're at and what we want. So
definitely. I go in between like weightlifting and not weightlifting. Sometimes I just want to do yoga and hike. Sometimes I do yoga, hiking, weightlifting. Sometimes I ride my bike. Sometimes I want to swim. Like, it can be very open and fluid. And
right.
anytime I try to put myself into like the structure of like Monday I lift weights for my back and biceps. Wednesdays I do legs. Maybe I'll stick with it for a week and then I just feel myself rebel. And I'm sure you both can
Yeah.
relate, all business owners, right? Like fuck rules and any sort of box. Like anytime that happens, even if I try to put these rules on myself, I can't do it.
Yeah, I have clients that I work with, and I suggest that they do certain things. And if there's something that they just don't want to do, they're like, oh, I really don't want to do that. Like, I don't enjoy it. I'm like, well, then don't do something that you don't enjoy. Let's find something that you do enjoy and brings lots of pleasure to you and you feel excited to show up to. Because when we have that excitement, then we're motivated to keep doing the thing over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I love that, and I also think like there's an invitation to explore some of these resistances that we have, because there may be a reason why we are resisting that. And so to give it at
Oh,
least something
definitely.
like a chance, like to give it a
Mhm.
chance and be open and lean into that uncomfortability. But I love, yeah, ultimately I love what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I found yoga when I was about 17, and if you listen to our first episode, you hear a little bit of our background, but very stressed person, very repressed as well, and used to drink a lot. And I found yoga in community college.
Cool.
I was in San Jose, and there was this older woman who came from Santa Cruz, this older hippie woman who taught hatha, and that's when I discovered breath and mindfulness and really started to connect to my body, and that just opened so much up for me. I feel like yoga can be a gateway into spirituality, into healing for so many of us. So I'm eternally grateful to the practice of yoga. And yeah, it's a great complementary practice to all the other things that we do. I try Something that I'm really trying to do is just like practice several, maybe like 5 yin postures before going to bed, just to like reset the body. Some days I'm good at doing it. Some days I don't always follow through, but yeah, it's such a deep practice of like coming home to oneself and just without any like letting go of the distractions, really keep returning home to oneself, returning home to the breath. And also, I'm really a nerd about cycle syncing. And so, women were such cyclical beings. And we all just spoke to that so beautifully about how, like, we don't want to do things. We kind of resist. We're not meant to do the same thing every day, all month, like, a man could do. Some days when we're approaching our period, it's so good to do just restorative yoga or gentle Pilates, and then other times when we're ovulating or in our follicular phase, to like be more like running and dancing and high intensity things. So
Mm,
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's this pressure that we have to be a certain way or have that high energy all of the time, with the follicular phase. Like, I know sometimes when I'm in that high of that phase, I'm like, oh my God, I can do anything and I want to be in this forever. But it's not realistic. And I think honoring that our energies will not be the same all the time and it's okay is such a deep practice for me.
Yeah. The surrender,
Yeah.
like of taking the rest and the pause and not being, um, inspired by anything and trusting that that's not going to be forever. I will get like lost in like this cycle sometimes of like, oh my gosh, I'm not inspired. I don't want to do anything. Screw my business. I'm a failure. And then I'm like, oh my God, here's my period.
Yeah.
So it's then finding, and I know what's happening, right? Like underneath the stories, I know what's going on. It's just the ego mind wants to tell the stories. Something needs to like be in control, right? If I'm not doing and going, taking one foot in front of the other, I'm failing. Like what am I even doing? I bought the yoga studio from a very masculine woman. Like she was just very go, 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 do. And even still, she still works there. She's still a teacher there, which is great, right? But I'll, we get a lot of snow here, right? So the other day I even needed to cancel classes because it was just way too much snow. It was dangerous. Like they put out like a warning, like try not to drive. And her response, I let her know I was canceling her class, and her response was, "I've never canceled classes. It's bad for business." I'm like,
Oh my God.
okay, but your class is canceled. So and then I now have like this very masculine woman who is still also like that reminder for me to still need to heal that part of me that needs
To soften.
yeah.
Mm.
So it's an interesting learning experience that I am in, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, I'm sure from having that mirror reflected from you, and I don't know, I would probably maybe feel triggered by that or have like my own stuff come around that around, oh, maybe I need to be like doing more or that sort of thing. So, and that's just another opportunity for us to really look at that and ask ourselves, is that really how I want to live, or is that's just their thing and their way of being that is not actually how I want to be.
Right. In the past too, because it's been quite a few months and things like this have been happening in the past. I would then like bitch to my husband about it. And I'd be like, can you believe this? I'd be like so up in arms about it. And now I'm just like, I just smile and giggle. Okay, whatever. But this is how I'm doing it.
Love it.
So it's fun.
Yoga is such an act in itself of revolution against just how we've been conditioned in this hyper masculine, go, 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 capitalistic society that really emphasis and prizes us for how much we do and accomplish. And so, yeah, so much compassion to all the beings, myself included, who, those ways of being that are still like in our nervous system, locked in our nervous system, coming back to the nervous system, because yeah, the body, it's all in the body, but it's hard to break free sometimes, because that was our safety net. That's how we would receive love from our families, right? So, or our at school, or all of these different ways.
Yeah,
So,
when you get praised for how much you're doing, it almost what's the word, like it reinforces that if I'm doing more, then I'm better or I'm more worthy. So a lot of that's just unlearning again.
Yeah, exactly.
it really is like a practice, surrendering and softening.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
But it's beautiful. Yeah, the reflections. Janessa has been such a good reflection. Those are essential in our lives too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful too to even just say that, like, when you are caught up in this, it's to then ask, like, your spirit guides, your creator, universe, whatever you want to call it, to ask them to show you how supported and loved you are. Like anytime I get myself now wrapped up in these stories of I'm not good enough. Who do I think I am? I'm not inspired, just all those stories. Or I feel like I'm stuck and stagnant and I'm going to fail. Right. I just ask, like, please show me how absolutely supported I am. And it always comes through like within 48 hours, So and it will help you to see that you can trust that you are always supported. And so if you experience some hard times around that, just ask to be shown how loved and supported you are, and you'll receive it.
there's a song that goes, why worry when you can pray? And I just love the song of the practice of prayer and the power of prayer, and surrendering things that feel heavy or larger than us to your higher power, however you connect to that energy.
Yeah, I love to something that I have been wanting to encourage myself to do more of, because it's so amazing for me, is asking a friend that I have a lot of trust with to reflect back to me what they see in me. And every time that I do that, like it always just brings me back to my truth and my heart, and reminds me of like who I am and how loved I am. And yeah, I think I've done that with you, Samantha, but I do that with other friends too, especially within the entrepreneurial world. It feels like we are so alone in the dreams that we are trying to accomplish. And so having support with people that get you in your situation is so powerful for me.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to steal that, I think.
It's a good one. Because we can forget sometimes like the magic that we hold, and how amazing that we truly are, and just by us being ourselves, we are creating change and inspiring others to be better, do better.
Yeah, easy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
And it's especially, if you are on social media in any capacity, like I wish I could just delete all my stuff, but I still use it for business. And it's great for connections, right? Like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for social media. I wouldn't know you or anything like that. And so it does have its pluses, but it's easy to just then get lost in comparison mode and not feeling like you're doing enough or being heard enough.
Oh, yeah, I feel like I could do a whole episode on that, talking about comparison and social media, and how toxic it can be to the psyche. I went through a whole journey with that, and I decided recently to delete every single person that I was following. So I had 0 followers for a while, and just last night I started to follow like a handful of people, and only people that really bring inspiration and I feel inspired or I gain a lot from following them. And if at any point in time I feel like it's not serving me, like I will delete it from my feed or clear the energy from that. And yeah, just those simple things of noticing how social media is like affecting you, and it can be so easy to not be aware of the effects of it, because we're just so used to going through the motions and scrolling and ending up in this cycle that is really perpetuating our insecurities and so many other things.
Stimulating the nervous system response, keeping us trapped on that hamster wheel.
What would you say is the number one thing that your clients struggle with that come to you?
So just what I tend to see a lot of is putting their practices into play, and then achieving the results from that. So like I said, the majority of people I see have been to a lot of therapists, have tried a lot of different therapy styles, and they're just not, it's just not connecting. It's not resonating with them. They're not getting to where they want to be. And so
would you say those modalities are more talk therapy?
yeah. And so then they'll come to me, and like I said, I always start at that nervous system, and but the next time I see them, whether it's in 1 or 2 weeks, is so many things have already clicked for them. They're so much freer in their being. So I would say the number one problem is just a stressed out nervous system. Whether that is not feeling good in their body, not loving themselves, struggling in their relationships, struggling in their business. Like I work with a wide variety of people. I'm somebody who can get pretty bored easily. So I don't like to do the same things all day, every day. And so I wear many hats. and I can work on many different levels of people. But it pretty much all stems with just they're in this toxic pattern, this cycle that they don't even realize that they're in. Like, we don't know that we're like trapped in like a fight or flight response. And a lot of that dysregulation comes from when we're infants. Like, we come into this world with a very dysregulated nervous system. It's why we cry. It's why we want our caregivers to hold and support us. And even if we had the best caregivers in the world, if they were dysregulated themselves, meaning if they were stressed out, which the majority are, then they were not able to regulate us. Or if we had the cry it out method put on us, which was very normal, especially like in the 80s and 90s, because there was this thought that your baby was self-soothing. But it actually turns out, surprise, surprise, that your baby was actually so emotionally exhausted that the baby just like passed out from. So have you ever like cried so hard that you passed out? That's what the baby is doing. So it's a very dysregulated nervous system that happens, from like the moment we're born pretty much. So that like activation, this hamster wheel effect, we don't even realize that we're in it until we actually are able to see the other side. Like, oh, there is a different way to feel. Like anxiety.
Or if there's something that happens that's very, very like a big breakdown, then we're like, oh, maybe there's something off. So I think it's important too to look at that before it gets to that point of like really being really difficult to move through.
Yeah, it's really sad and unfortunate how people are just normalizing their pain and discomfort in their bodies. And when I learned about how important prenatal development is for a person, I was like, Mom, how were you during your pregnancy? What were you doing? What were you eating? Were you stressed? Like, what was going on in your life? Because I was genuinely curious. And I'm also curious, what is kind of one of your number one practices to help people kind of come back to homeostasis and help regulate the nervous system?
So I absolutely love like the shake it out method, pretty much what we did right before we pressed play, like stand, like shake her whole body and jumping around, right? If I can't get my client to do ecstatic dance instead of that, then that's amazing too. But also the vagus nerve reset is really powerful. And so the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in your body. And when we do this, and it's the key to turning on your parasympathetic nervous system. So the vagus nerve reset, when you do it daily, it can really help to more align you in that parasympathetic state.
What is the vagus nerve reset?
So it's just involves just like eye movement. So you literally just you keep your whole body facing forward. You just look to the right for 30 seconds, unless you need to yawn, sigh, or swallow. Then that means that it was activated, and you can bring your eyes back to center, and then you just look to the left for 30 seconds. It's really
Oh.
Yeah, that practice was very somewhat similar to this thing I learned that's all about nervous system regulation in this book called I'm always forgetting the name of it. It's called Call into the Wild or something. And it's from this amazing somatic healer. And that's partially one of the exercises, but also adding on to that, like looking off into the distance, into the horizon. Because when we are looking so close up all the time, it actually triggers our fight response because it's telling our bodies to like focus on that specific object. So actually looking off into the distance as far as you possibly can and just like holding your gaze really softly is another way to calm down the nervous system.
I've never heard about that one.
Yeah, it's nice. I've been practicing. It's really beautiful. Feels really nourishing to my body, especially if I've been on the computer for hours at a time, which I often am. And just taking a break to really let my eyes rest and like look off into the distance is super helpful.
Intuitively, that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's why people love gazing at the sunrise or the sunset. It's very calming.
And it makes sense that we're stressed out when we're like this all the time, like
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love all these takeaways that I hope everyone here will at least try or practice or
Mhm.
utilize in their lives. And so, Lauren, I have one more question for you. What is bringing you pleasure right now in your life?
I have been trying to incorporate like a daily cacao ceremony in the afternoon into my day.
Cacao. Yes.
So that whole process of just sitting, and I put my phone on silent and I put it somewhere else, not in arm's reach. And I just put like an alarm on, and I give myself like 30 minutes to an hour to just sit there and sip cacao. And I stare out my window, staring off into the distance. And I mean, I would do it outside if it wasn't 10 degrees here.
Oh, goodness.
But I think that's probably what's bringing me the most pleasure right now, just that pause.
I love it. Bringing
Thank you
more
for sharing
ritual.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, I think, to have like a midday reset, just
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
pause, check in.
Yeah, we're just kind of focused on like what's your morning alignment like. I think that afternoon and an evening practice, which I'm the worst at an evening practice, but
Me too.
oh God,
I
it's so
really
hard.
struggle at nighttime. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Yeah.
The most perfect night for me would be like yin yoga, bath, and an orgasm. Those would be like
Me too.
That sounds about me too. That sounds great.
Totally. That is, yeah, goals for
Thank
2022.
yes. Oh my gosh.
more yin, more bath, more orgasm.
Yeah. Baths have been huge for me too. Just calm myself into a center and to feel held. I've
Mhm.
been,
I mean, it is like you're being in the womb.
yeah. Well, thank you so, so much, Lauren. I've loved getting to know you, and you have so much wisdom. Where can our people find you?
Probably the easiest would just be my Instagram at I am Lauren Bentley. And
And
then you can
I'll,
find
yeah,
all my information from there.
I'll be sure to leave that link in the description so people can find you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so good to
Thank
connect.
you.
We'll talk
You too.
soon.
Okay, sounds great.